Hello, we are Sarah Youngren and Dan Rapp, longtime biological technicians for Alaska Maritime National Wildlife Refuge. We spent summers 2015 through 19 on Aiktak Island in the Eastern Aleutians. Today we're going to show you what a field season on Aiktak looks like. But first, the so what, who cares? Aiktak is one of Alaska Maritime's annual seabird monitoring field camps, which are spread across the vast refuge and collect data to fulfill the refuge's mission. The seabird monitoring program follows standardized protocols. We collect data and then enter it into refuge databases, which then get summarized at the end of each field season and go into an annual report by field camp. And then a yearly refuge-wide status and trends report is compiled for Alaska seabirds. Additionally, independent research and special studies commonly get completed and published. That's a brag about the refuge. On Aiktak, we collect data on most breeding seabirds, productivity and chronology through nest monitoring, chick growth, chicken adult diet, and population status for breeding birds that are attending the colony, usually via index plots. All these data complete an annual picture status about the health of individual seabird species that use Aiktak, and in turn, the health of the ocean waters they depend on. A lot of species make use of Aiktak, and we monitor many of them. Ready? Fork-tailed and leeches storm petrels, ancient merlets, glaucous-winged gulls, tufted and horned puffins, pigeon guillemots, red-faced, pelagic, and double-crested cormorants, common and thick-billed murres, black oyster catchers, gassons and rhinoceros auklets, bald eagles, ravens, and peregrine falcons, song and savanna sparrows, and Pacific wrens. A smattering of vagrants and migrants, green-winged teal, sea otters and harbor seals, and stellar sea lions. There's a lot of flowering plants and a lot of insects. And now we present all the parts of the season. Prior to heading into the field, we spend the month of May in Homer, Alaska, making preparations including purchasing and packing food and gear. We build some gear and monitoring tools, like diet collection screens and artificial burrows. And also pre-build items to maintain and improve the field camp, like this storage bin. We prepare and assemble data collection field books and logs. We pack, secure, and transport gear following protocols to prevent the introduction of unwanted plants and animals to the refuge. On ship loading day, many hands and hydraulics make quick work as everything for all the camps and many other projects the refuge supports are loaded onto Alaska Maritime's research vessel, the Tekla. And at the end of a hurry up and wait day, everything finds its place and it's almost time to head to sea. It's time to head out. It will take a few days to get to Aiktak, with some stops along the way. Safety first. Time to practice getting into immersion suits. We slowly make our way at roughly 10 knots. She may not be the fastest boat, but the Tekla is always on the move. Sometimes we deploy temporary camps along the way, which requires skiffs and professional schleppers, every capable passenger. Rain or shine, we deploy. Tents are erected. And off we go. Next stop, Chowade Island, another Fish and Wildlife annual seabird monitoring camp. As we make our way further west, rain and fog become the norm. Time to head to shore again, more food and gear to haul. We form chains to slowly move everything up the beach and to camp. It's a lot of walking back and forth with boxes, coolers, pelican cases, fuel, and sometimes lumber. Eventually we get everything to camp, and it's back in the skiff, minus 2 campers, that will stay in place for the summer. Next stop, Aiktak. Time to finish some last-minute tasks before arriving, like making flags to mark burrows and nests. Once we make it to Aiktak, we'll hit the ground running. As the Tekla crosses Unamak Pass, Aiktak appears on the horizon. We round Ugamak, Aiktak's island neighbor, and pull into the channel between the 2 islands. We pass the point called Four Sisters, and get our first glimpse of the camp cabin, known as the Puffin Palace, with hopes that we find it in good condition. Constructed in 1997, this little plywood cabin has endured a lot of gnarly weather. The Tekla anchors up and we start staging gear on the back deck. One of us goes ashore with fellow schleppers to open camp, and the other stays on the ship to make sure nothing gets left behind. The skiff has to navigate the kelp forest that surrounds the island, but Aiktak's landing is well protected from rough seas. Some light scrambling in waders over kelpy rocks is usually required to make it to shore. The skiff returns to the Tekla for another load. And everything gets staged on the beach, then moved to the cabin. Where the winter door and window coverings are removed. Time for a quick cabin tour. This is what it looks like after we've moved in. The cabin is not large, but it has space for everything we need, and keeps us dry, mostly, and warm, mostly. We have bunks for sleeping, a propane stove for cooking, lots of storage for food and gear, and a desk for our laptop, satellite phone, etc. We keep coolers under the cabin, which serve as our fridge, which works surprisingly well, because living on Aiktak is like living in the fridge vegetable drawer, cool and humid. Our energy needs come from a series of solar panels. And our water is fetched from a nearby creek and filtered. Single sideband radios used to be our principal means of communication. Now we primarily use satellite phone-based email. If the cabin needs any repair, like new roofing, it usually gets done by the ship's crew during deployment or resupply. And then, moving back to deployment day, before we know it, a skiff returns to take everyone, except us, back to the Tekla, so it can continue on to Aiktak and west to Buldir to deploy their camp. It's a bit of a surreal moment as the Tekla pulls away and we're on our own. We won't see the Tekla again until the midsummer resupply, usually. So we start unpacking, trying to get as much done as possible, especially if it's not raining. We try to find a space for all the things, but not lose anything. One year we only found the black olives during the final inventory. The first day on island is long and tiring. And as the light dwindles, we eat, brush our teeth, check our email, and crawl into bed. We usually arrive on Aiktak the very end of May, and our biological monitoring starts immediately. One of the first tasks is to locate as many black oyster catcher nests as we can to monitor for productivity and chronology. Nests are located on the shore of the island and are very well hidden. Within our first week, we also need to start following glaucous-winged gull nests for productivity and chronology. Most of the island gulls nest on aptly named Gull Mountain, so that's where we monitor them. We'll continue to add more nests across the egg-laying period to have a representative sample. Next up, ancient merlets, which nest mostly in earthen burrows on and around the low bluffs of the north side of the island. We need to find a sample of 100 burrows to follow for productivity and chronology. There are 18 storm petrel monitoring plots on Aiktak and 5 plots of artificial burrows. All burrows within these plots are checked either weekly or bi-monthly, depending on the type of data being collected in the plot. Dan has stuck his arm in thousands of burrows on Aiktak and elsewhere. I'm curious where he falls in the world ranking of burrows grubbed. Here we have Dan pulling a fork-tailed storm petrel out to confirm species and to check for metal bands. Checking storm petrel burrows is almost always a wet and cold experience, especially early in the season. Glaucous-winged gull population counts start as soon as we arrive and end by mid-June. During counts, we count all visible birds in plots across the island within a 24-hour period. Plots are split between the two of us for each of 3 to 5 replicate counts, each done on a different day. Aiktak's cliffs are checked on arrival for cormorant nests and to see what the mers are up to. Cormorant nests will be mapped and counted later in the month. Tufted puffin population trends are monitored within 10 plots on Aiktak. By early June, before birds have laid, we tally all burrows within these plots to get a burrow density. Later in the season, we will determine occupancy rates in these plots. In June, after egg laying commences, we'll collect similar data for glaucous-winged gulls as an index of annual nesting effort.
25 large.
We've made it through the first week on island. Time to rest. Nights on Aiktak are raucous with storm petrel and ancient merlet melodies. Bald eagle nests hatch early June, as do green-winged teals, short-eared owls, and passerines. Harbor seal pups have also arrived by this time. When we first get to Aiktak, the days are cold, but often dry. But the Aleutian standard of wind, rain, and fog quickly sets in. Isobaric maps delivered via our sat phone let us know of impending low and high pressure systems. All monitoring is worked around the weather, but there's no avoiding being wet and cold most of the time. That's why we wear lots of layers and rain gear, including waterproof boots. Rain gear also serves as poop protection in the gull colony. And we wear hard hats to protect our noggins from the occasional thwack on the head from irritated nesters. By early to mid-June, oystercatcher chicks are hatching. Chicks spend only a few days at their nest site before moving to foraging areas with their parents. So it's important to check nests frequently around expected hatch dates to avoid losing a nest story. Pastoring transects happen in early June along one of our cobbled beaches, called Old Camp Beach. In 2018, we tagged breeding ancient merlets to determine where Aiktak's birds overwinter, which turns out to be the Sea of Japan and the Yellow Sea. Migrants and vagrants often show up on Aiktak in early June, like this ruddy turnstone. Tufted puffins attend Aiktak throughout the breeding season, forming large spinning clouds above their colonies. By the end of June, our glaucous-winged gull nests begin hatching. We follow nests until all eggs have a known fate. Chicks quickly wander from nest sites, so a bit of searching is often required to complete nest fates. Ancient merlet eggs are also well into hatching by the end of June.
So I checked this burrow 7 days ago. It had 2 chicks with an adult. So now I'm checking to make sure that the chicks left the burrow and there's no chicks remaining. So the burrow is empty. All that remains are some membranes from a successful hatching of 2 eggs. So this burrow is done for the season. It won't be checked again until next breeding season.
Chicks only spend a few days in their burrows being brooded before they are led to foraging grounds by their parents. Chicks will then finish their growth at sea. Pigeon guillemot population counts start in June. We count birds we find on the water between 7 and 10 a.m. within designated count areas. Population counts can only happen when weather conditions are favorable, which can be hard to come by. Fog tends to be the main weather issue that prevents population counts and any cliff observations, like when mapping and counting cormorant nests for productivity monitoring. Good maps are a critical part of our monitoring on Aiktak. Maps allow us to re-find followed nest burrows and crevices. Some maps are used every year and maintain nest numbers across seasons. Other maps we make annually and use only for one season. Metal poles around the island maintain plot location and observation points. Stellar sea lions breed across the channel from Aiktak on Ugamak Island, but they use Aiktak for foraging and resting. By the end of June and early July, we start having fork-tailed storm petrel chicks. We measure chicks every 7 days and start wing cord measurements only once feathers start erupting. We measure as many chicks as we can safely repeatedly extract from burrows and chronology plots. Once we hit July, the weather becomes a little more extreme, with frequent, strong, low-pressure systems hitting the island and lots of fog. All that rain means the island's vegetation goes gangbusters. Our trails quickly become mired in the grass. July is also peak wildflower season. Aiktak has a network of trails that take us to plots and observation points. Flags and poles help us maintain trails amongst the vegetation. We fashion bridges out of driftwood to span gulches. Trails generally follow the natural topography of the island, including drainages. Horned puffin counts, known as raft counts, happen in the last 30 days of their incubation period, which starts late June and ends late July. Like pigeon guillemot population counts, we count horned puffins on the water within bounded areas and at specific times of day. We get one official resupply in mid-July. The Tekla returns to provide us with needed food and gear. We also go aboard for hot showers, laundry, a good meal, and ice cream. Tufted puffin productivity and chronology starts in July. We try to find 100 occupied burrows that we can see the contents of with a flashlight. Easier said than done, because most tufted puffins' burrows are long and curvy.
So right now I'm going to check a tufted puffin burrow to see if anybody's home.
It's in July, too, that we end up rescuing tufted puffins from the interior of the island, where they're down and can't take off. When we find them, we'll capture them and then take them to the ocean or into their colony. Mer productivity and chronology also begins in July. Finding ledge nests that can be monitored is not easy on Aiktak because most of our cliff colonies can only be observed at great distance or from the water. Both common and thick-billed mers breed on Aiktak. Our eaglets are growing fast, as are our otter pups. Time to check back in with our oystercatcher chicks, which are looking dapper in their new feathers. We monitor oystercatcher chick diet by collecting and measuring shellfish shells found within their territories. Limpets are the principal diet items we find. We also monitor glaucous wing gull diet via adult pellets of regurgitated indigestible material and from regurgitated food piles left by adults for chicks. We now have both fork-tailed and Leach's storm petrel chicks. And we start mist netting at night for breeding adult storm petrels in order to sample diet being brought back to their chicks. Adults are measured for wing chord and mass upon capture. Horned puffin productivity and chronology begins mid-July. On Aiktak, horned puffins nest in crevices under boulders in colonies adjacent to the ocean. Like tufted puffin monitoring, we try to find crevices we can see into with a flashlight. Quality crevices are given a painted number so they can be used in successive years.
So right now I'm going to check one of my horned puffin crevices. That requires climbing through that hole, shining a flashlight, and seeing if anybody's home.
Our cormorant nests have hatched and their chicks are as big as adults now. Time to count nests and numbers of chicks. Our tufted puffins have also hatched and now it's time for chick growth. Tufted puffins chicks can only be removed from short and relatively straight burrows. Even then, a lot of body contortion is required. Artificial burrows are meant to help with this by providing easily accessible chicks. Aiktak is never short on surreal scenery. The end of July usually marks mid-incubation for the island murres, which means it's time for murre population counts. As with all previous population counts, murre population counts occur within designated plots. Counts are also standardized by time of day and observation point. For this plot, all visible murres are counted on one side of the islet, called Sail Rock. Murre productivity carries on. Because they nest on distant cliffs, murre nest contents are hard to observe, so we use breeding postures to help confirm egg and chick presence, including incubation of egg, and brooding of chick postures. Glaucous-winged gull chicks grow fast, and by mid-August, most of them have left their colonies and flown to the shoreline of the island, where they will continue getting meals from their parents while learning to forage on their own. We count fledgling gulls on 2 beaches as an index of successful chick production of the year. With most tufted puffin chicks hatched, it's time to revisit tufted puffin population plots to determine a parent occupancy rate for the number of burrows we counted in these same plots at the beginning of the summer. A lot of burrows get checked, requiring a lot of crawling and neck torquing. This sequence shows our progress across one of Aiktak's tufted puffin population plots. Tufted puffin diet collection also begins in August. We collect tufted puffin diet by temporarily blocking burrows with metal screens. A parent will return to its chick with a boatload of food, get frustrated because it can't get into its burrow, and subsequently leave its meal delivery on the screen or in the mud next to it. Individual burrows are only blocked for a few hours and only once a season. Also, chicks receive several feedings a day, and we're hopefully only taking one. Once collected, we process the diet samples, cleaning mud off the fish, putting them in jars, weighing them, labeling them, and adding ethanol as a preservative to save them for identification. Tufted puffin chick diet on Aiktak consists mostly of small fish, including larval and juvenile age classes. But other prey is also possible, including larval squid and octopi. Most horned puffin eggs have either failed or hatched by mid-August. We continue to follow chicks up until they depart. Chicks are very good at hiding when we hear us coming, so a stealthy approach is required. We've reached the end of the summer. Our little storm petrel chicks are starting to lose their down, revealing feathers underneath. A few will even fledge before we leave. We're collecting our last tufted puffin chick growth points for the season. A few of these will also fledge before we leave. Chicks are much harder to catch now that they are larger. Oyster catchers are starting to group up and migrants are moving through. All signs that it's time to go. The last couple days before the Tekla arrives are exhausting. The cabin has to be closed and gear staged, and we're usually collecting data right until the end, especially for tufted puffins. The Tekla comes into view. Sometimes they arrive on a dry day, but usually she shows up in the early morning, and generally when it's raining. Once a skiff is launched, it won't take but an hour to load our gear and put the winter coverings on the door. A couple in situ water temperature loggers are picked up, and then we're off. We watch as we pull away from Aiktak. It's a bit of a surreal experience as all the sights and sounds from the summer just disappear, and we enter an alternate reality. It's also a relief to be finished with our data collection and last-minute packing. As we make our way back to Homer, we're reminded why we left Aiktak when we did, as fall weather is starting to set in. Thank you for joining us for a field scene on Aiktak, a place that we've come to love.